guys, welcome to a new segment on my channel called Spilling the Tales. Spilling the Tales is basically the fiction version of telling the told and untold, where I tell you guys stories, obviously sticking to the theme of my channel, South African stories. So whether it be from a movie, a series, books. So I'm really excited about this new segment on my channel. I will be posting every Wednesday, every second Wednesday, or every other Wednesday. Just know it's on Wednesdays. So just expect to see me on Wednesdays. So basically Sundays would just be non-fiction and Wednesday would be fiction. So I hope you guys are excited about this new segment. I'm so excited, and I'm also a bit nervous because I'm very used to telling stories in certain ways. So this is new and challenging, but I'm so excited and I hope you guys are excited too. So please also let me know what stories you guys would like me to tell you about. Today we're starting off strong with the domestic, and you can find this on Amazon Prime. It is a South African horror movie and it is a bit long. It's about an hour and 56 minutes, somewhere there. And Amanda DuBont is the lead actress in this movie. The movie starts off strong with us seeing this big white double-story house with this big garden and this blue pool. And you can tell that this house is in an affluent area in Johannesburg. Maybe Sandhurst, Hyde Park, Bryanston, you know, one of those areas. And as the camera zooms in, we hear a lady's voice that says, "Our culture believes that life does not end with death, but continues in another realm inhabited by Amatlozi, our ancestors." And then we see a fridge, and on the fridge there's a picture of this couple, and they look very happy. They're holding each other, they're smiling, and we find out that these two people are married. The woman, her name is Katlego, but she goes by Kat, and her husband's name is Dumi. The camera then pans down and you see like the reflection of the kitchen, and on the floor you see a lady lying down, and she's wearing the green uniform that like your helpers usually wear. The ones that you can find at like Pick n Pay or Checkers, and you can clearly see that she's not breathing. Then we see a TV, a broken TV, and again it's like a reflection, and you see the dining room table, and you see a woman just like walking around. She's holding a basket and she's like shaking the basket and just like whispering inside of it. So you just hear but you don't hear what she says. And then she shakes the basket and then she throws whatever's inside on the table, and you don't really see what she threw on the table. And then the scene changes again, and we see this blue BMW pulling up into a cemetery. We see a pastor speaking to about like 10 people. It looks like a very small, intimate funeral. And this couple gets out of the car. It's Kat and Dumi, and immediately Dumi just seems very irritated and annoyed, almost like he doesn't want to be at this funeral. He's there like, oh my gosh, like we're already late, like we missed the entire funeral. Then he complains about the traffic that they're going to face on their way home. And Kat's kind of just like, you know, just like leaves him, but you can tell that she kind of wants to be there. So as they walk towards this graveyard, they meet up with the pastor. The pastor bumps into them, and Dumi immediately apologizes. He's like, "I'm so sorry that we're late." And then he opens his wallet, and in his wallet you can tell that, okay, this man has money. There's about like 4 F&B cards. You can see a private wealth card in there too. And then he starts taking out money, and he takes out this wad of cash and he starts counting it. And the pastor just looks at him, and Dumi kind of just is like embarrassed. So he just gives him like the whole wad, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for the loss." And then they walk towards the gravesite where all these people were leaving. And as they get there, they see this girl sitting on a rock, and she's wearing all black, and she has a name tag. And the name tag just says Blessing. And you can tell that Blessing had just come back from work. She works at a fast food restaurant, and she just had to leave to come to this funeral. Almost like she was working and then she just had to go there and didn't have a chance to change her clothes or anything. So she's sitting there, she looks a bit down, and Kat looks at her and she's like, oh my gosh, Blessing. And Blessing just looks at her and she's like, oh, like your mother Martha worked for us. We're so sorry for your loss. And she's like, I'm not too sure if you remember, but when you were younger, you used to stay with us and Martha, but when you're about 5 or 6, she moved you back home. And then she's like, I'm Kat and this is my husband Dumi. And Blessing just kind of looks at them, but she doesn't really have much emotion, and she's just like, how did she die? And they look a bit taken aback and they're like, oh, no one told you like how your mother died. And she just looks at them. Then they explain that, oh no, like we were out that morning and once we got back home, we walked inside and we just found your mother lying on the floor. They say that it was a heart attack, but it was quick. She didn't suffer. And Blessing just like looks at them and just kind of like acknowledges them. Because the conversation was like a bit awkward, it seems like they were in a rush to leave. So as they're about to leave, Blessing asks like, oh, did she leave anything behind? And Kat's like, oh, like everything is still in her room. Let's exchange numbers so that like you can call me and you can come get them whenever you're ready. And as they're exchanging numbers, Blessing gets like this vision. So she sees a tree, almost like someone's looking up at the tree, like someone's lying on their back and you see this tree and like these pink and purple petals are falling down. Then she sees this young girl and she's lying on her back and half of her face is painted white. So like here it's painted white, and then you just see like blood drops on her. And then Blessing holds Kat on her side and she's like, you've been called. And immediately Dumi just kind of like jumps in and he's like, no, like we don't believe in all this traditional stuff. And you can tell that these two, like Kat and Dumi, are a bit like, I don't want to say whitewashed, but like just like white, even like throughout the whole movie. Like they don't speak their home language, they're always like twanging, they're always like, oh, we don't believe in that traditional stuff, or we left it with our ancestors. That's just the kind of vibe that Dumi and Kat gives us. And then Blessing just looks at Kat and she's like, you can't ignore who you are. And they just like mize her and then they walk towards the car. And once they get inside the car, Dumi's just like, oh, hey, what about Martha, hey? Martha's kid. She's a bit of a weirdo, hey? But Kat is not really paying attention and Kat is just like, how did she know? Like, how could she guess? And it seems like Dumi's just trying to like calm her down, and he's like, oh, you know what? Martha probably told her about it. You know, like mother and daughter relationships. Almost just like he shouldn't really think much of it. Then we see like sort of an extended version of this vision or the scene that Blessing saw when she touched Kat. And you see this woman, almost like a sangoma, like, you know, like sometimes sangomas have like those like wig things, like with white beads on their head. And this woman is holding a chicken, but you can't really see the woman's face. And then you see the blood dripping on this young girl's face, and you just see her screaming. You can't hear anything, but you just see her mouth like going wider and wider, like she's screaming. Then we see Blessing on her phone, and you just hear like chanting in the back. The scene goes to Kat and Dumi. They're home now and their house is a complete mess. You can tell that without Martha, they do not know how to look after themselves. There's dishes in the sink, the bed hasn't been made, and Kat is there busy cooking, and they're just speaking about how Martha used to spoil them and how they have to find a replacement. And that's what they would do over like the next few days. Kat would interview some people for the position. They would talk about how they just really need to find someone to clean. You would see the house getting progressively more dirty and dirty. Like the sink would pile up, you'd see maggots, you'd see the bed unmade. There was one night where they were watching TV and drinking wine, and then you see that the bottle of wine is still in the living room, the glasses are still there, and it's just very nasty. It's just very nasty. You can see they don't know how to take care of themselves. You can also kind of tell that Kat and Dumi kind of put themselves on like a pedestal and talk badly about or think badly about people that clean their houses. So as they talk about how they need to find someone new to replace Martha, Kat is telling Dumi, so like, oh my gosh, like someone once told me that she had this lady, and then once they got home, all their jewelry was gone and she stole it. And then Dumi's like, yeah, you know, you can't trust people these days. And just like, this is like very weird. Like they just think that they're like better black people. Like they just think like they're the better black people, you know. The next day, Kat is at work and we see Dumi in the study and he's working. Both Kat and Dumi sometimes work from home and sometimes they go into the office. So Dumi is an accountant and Kat works at a real estate office. She's an estate agent. Yeah, Kat is an estate agent. So we see Dumi in the study, and in the background you see that there's like a degree on the wall. It's from Wits University, and he's on the phone with this guy, and this guy basically just tells him like, oh, I'm so sorry, like you lost this account. And it was an account that he had been working on for almost 7 years. So he's so disappointed. And then we also see Kat at work. She walks into the parking lot and we see this lady. Kat goes up to her and she does not look impressed. And this lady is just like, I've been having visions. Like, you can't ignore who you are. You need to listen to me. Like, can we please talk about this? And Kat does not seem interested. And Kat is just like, can you please leave? And if you don't leave, I'm going to call security. That night, she's busy telling Dumi about this lady, and Dumi's like laughing. He's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she went to your place of work. And she's like, can you imagine busy telling me all about like these visions? Like, you know, like I don't care. And as she's cooking, in her peripheral vision, she kind of like sees someone, so she turns her head and then you see like this young boy with a blanket over him. Like he comes, like it's on him like this, and his face is painted completely white. And it's like very quick, like a split second that Kat sees this person, and she's like and then like she just drops whatever she's doing, and then Dumi quickly runs to get her some medication, and he hands her these pills. It's blue on one side and white on the other side, and she quickly takes them, and then it zooms into the medication and we see that Kat is taking medication for schizophrenia and psychosis. The next day, Kat gets a message from Blessing, and then Blessing shows up to the house, and as she walks inside the house, she kind of stares at this Bible that's on the table. She stares at a cross that's on the wall, and Kat is looking at her almost like she thinks like this girl's judging her. And then they walk outside to the room that Martha lived in, and then Blessing sees this as a good opportunity to apologize to Kat, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry about what happened before. And Kat is just like, don't worry, like it's okay. And Blessing tells her that she just wants to help Kat and that she shouldn't take this calling lightly. And then Kat is just like, they don't believe in those things, like doesn't believe in all those traditional things. And then she just leaves Blessing to it, and then Blessing opens the cupboard and we see the green uniform that her mom died in. A few days pass and there was a successful candidate, and Kat and Dumi are really excited for this person to start working, but then she doesn't show up for work, she's not answering their phone calls, and she basically just ghosted them. So now they don't know what to do, and then they suggest maybe getting like a maid service, and they decide against it. And then Dumi's like, well, you know, we could just hire Blessing. And he's like, I mean, her mom was a cleaner, maybe it runs in the family, which is actually a bit rude. Like, what do you mean it runs in the family? But it's like, you know, maybe it runs in the family. And, you know, we can trust her. Like, we trusted her mom, we can trust her. And Kat is just like, can we? But they do end up hiring Blessing. And we see Blessing arrive at the house, moving in, and as she sits on the bed, she kind of just like looks around knowingly, like she just knows something that they don't know. That night we see that the house is finally clean because now they have Blessing. And then Blessing cooks dinner for them because clearly they don't cook for themselves. And she serves them while they're sitting at the dinner table drinking red wine. And then she serves them like salad and this chicken, like this dark chicken. And they're like, oh, this looks good. And she's like, yeah, it's my specialty. And then they just look at the chicken weirdly, like, And then that night, whilst they're in bed, Kat does not seem impressed. She's like, oh my gosh, like, did they not teach her anything? It's like she's never been in a kitchen before. And Dumi's like, oh, it's like not that bad. But he's like, you know what? Let's just put her on a 1-month contract and just see how she does. The next morning, Kat is already gone. She's at work and Dumi is dressed in a suit, like he's getting ready to leave the house. And Blessing approaches him and then she's like, good luck, sir. And he's like, oh, thank you. And then she hands him like this plate. And on the plate, they're like these 3 balls. These dark balls, they look like chocolate balls almost. And it looks like they're flirting kind of. Like she's like, oh, sir. And then he's like, yeah, you know what I mean? That's how they look. And then afterwards, he like, Dumi takes it and he like bites into it and he's like, spicy and creamy too. And then he's like, listen, don't tell Kat about this. You know how she feels about like all these traditional stuff. And then he's like, oh, by the way, here's your contract. It's just a 1-month contract. And then Blessing like bends over to sign it, but she bends over in front of Kat. And Kat looks like he looks away kind of, but like you can tell that he's like, he likes it. Like he's like, you know? Now that Kat and Dumi are both at work, Blessing sees this as an opportunity for her to cleanse the house. So we see her with Mpepo basically walking around the house, it's burning, and then she sits on the floor and then she starts talking to the ancestors while this Mpepo is still burning. And she's like, Makos, hey! Like, you know, that kind of thing. And as she's busy doing this, Kat gets home, she walks in and she thinks that the house is burning down. And then she realizes that Blessing is burning Mpepo and she gets really, really angry. She takes Mpepo and she throws it away. And Blessing is just like, I'm cleansing the house of evil spirits. And then Kat sits her down and she basically just explains to her the rules of the house. Like, you know, like we don't believe in that sort of thing. Don't do that. And she's trying to be understanding of Blessing and what she's doing. And then Blessing says that it's important to cleanse the house after there's been a death. And this is kind of like when Kat loses it and Kat is like, listen, we don't believe in those things. We don't do those traditional things. We live that with our ancestors. Blessing then continues with her day and we see her in the bathroom. She's cleaning the bathroom and then she stares at this electric toothbrush. And this electric toothbrush is like white and blue. She's kind of like staring at it. And then the bell for the gate rings. And Blessing goes outside and like, you know, like that intercom phone thing. So she takes it and she's like, hello. And there's this guy on the other side and he's like, I'm here to clean the garden. And she's like, who are you? And then he's like, I'm Junior. I clean the garden here. And then she's like, they didn't tell me about you. And he's like, talk to Kat, talk to Dumi, I work here. And then Blessing calls Kat and Kat's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, that's Junior, let him in. And then she lets Junior in. Also, this scene was just interesting. Not interesting, it was just weird. Because Blessing's accent changes all the time. So when she's like on this phone thing, talking to Junior, and also when she calls Kat, like her accent is like, ma'am, there's someone here to clean the garden. And then Jiggy throughout the movie, then she just talks like in her normal voice. And then she changes to like a black accent. And it's just like, just stick to one accent, you know? Like why you keep switching? But anyways, that's Junior now in the house. That night at the dinner table, they're sitting there and Kat is just kind of like staring into oblivion, and then you just hear like rattling. Like she just keeps hearing rattling, and Dumi's talking to her, and then she kind of just like snaps back into it, and Dumi's telling her how he got that account back. So remember that account that he had been working on for like the last 7 years that he lost? He got it back, and he's like, oh, it's so weird, you know, like Dan was cycling and then he fell and he broke both of his arms. So now like the account is mine again. Remember that thing that Blessing made him eat for good luck? It was that. That night they're also eating dinner that obviously Blessing cooked, and Kat doesn't look impressed, but Dumi is enjoying the food. He's like, oh wow, this tastes really good. And Kat is like, it tastes like glass, and she's not enjoying it. And then she walks into the kitchen and she's like reprimanding Blessing. She's like, Blessing, you know what? Whatever food that she's been cooking, like stop it. Just cook normal food. That's what she said. She's like, just cook normal food. And as she's busy reprimanding Blessing, she hears rattling again and kind of like just distracts her, so she just goes to bed. As she's asleep, Kat still hears this rattling, and then she wakes up and this rattling still continues. Then the next morning we just see her taking even more of her pills, the blue and white pills, and instead of just taking like 1 or 2 like she usually would, now she's taking like 4. And it also seems like she's losing her mind just a bit. Like she's making coffee and then she opens the tin that they keep the sugar in, and then she's like, what happened to the sugar? I just bought sugar a couple of days ago. And then we see Dumi in the bathroom, and we see that the toothbrush that Blessing kept staring at belongs to him. On Kat's way to work, we learned that the lady that was outside of her office in the beginning is actually her mother. And her mother calls her and she's like, listen, you have to listen to the ancestors, your gift is strong. And Kat is adamant that her gift is gone, and she gets really angry and she just drops the phone. Back at the house, we see that Blessing and Junior, the gardener, are getting really close. She's there like hanging clothes up outside, and then there's like this one white outfit that belongs to Kat that Blessing like looks at, and then like she kind of like puts it on top of herself, like, you know, just like doing this with the clothes. And then Junior just like stares at her, and then she sees him and she gets a bit like shocked, like, hey. And then he's like, I bought you a sandwich. And then we see them in the kitchen and like they're drinking tea or coffee, eating the sandwich and just having conversation. And Junior's like, so why did she come work here? And she's just like, oh, you know, I just wanted to help Kat. And he's like, oh, where did she work before? And she's like, well, you know, I was a waitress, but Kat really needed my help, and that's why I'm here. Blessing then asks him, like, why are you working for Kat and Dumi? And then Junior's just like, I just want money. And then she's like, you want money? And he's like, yeah, I want money. Then she's like, come here. And then he's like, okay. So she gets off the kitchen counter and he goes straight to her, like looking at her. And then she's like, you want money? And he's like, yeah, I want money, like eager. And then she's like, okay. And then she takes out like this black small bag from like her breast, like she takes it out like this, and then she's like, close your eyes. So then he closes his eyes, and then she's like, open your mouth wide, and opens his mouth, and then she's like, stick out your tongue. But then she does it weird. She's like, stick out your tongue like this. Blessing then takes out a coin and she puts it on Junior's tongue. After this, she opens this black bag of hers, and then she takes out like soil, and then she starts sprinkling it on his tongue. And then Junior opens his eyes and he looks shocked, like he's like, and then afterwards she like shoves his tongue back into his mouth, and then she starts like massaging his throat. And then he ends up swallowing it, and then when he was done, like he started coughing like profusely. And then he just looks at her and he looks so scared of her, and then he just like runs out, and then she's just like, oh well. And then she says like in a flirty way, like, oh, when you get money, don't forget to buy me a car. That night, Kat is cooking, and you can tell that they're going to have guests over that night. Then we see Kat sitting at the dinner table with Dumi and their 2 friends, Tshego and Bongi. Then Blessing walks out, and Kat Kat introduces her. She's like, oh, this is Martha's daughter, Blessing. She's our new maid. And they just kind of like smile at her, and then Blessing walks out. And then Boingi's like, so how is she? And that's what Kat needed to just like vent. And Kat is like, oh my gosh, she's so weird. She barely knows how to do anything. She barely speaks. And like as she's like talking about Blessing walks out again, and then all of them just like keep quiet. And then Blessing like cleans the table, and as soon as she leaves, then Kat goes off. She starts telling them about how she was burning mpepo in the house and how she thought that the house was gonna burn down. And then Boingi's like, oh, you know, she's probably one of those ones. And it's just also just so weird. Like, why do you say that? But she's like, oh, she's probably one of those ones. You know, those ones that believe that if you cut your fingernails and mix it with nuts and speak to the ancestors, then you're gonna get rich. And then they like start laughing. Then Tshego jumps in and he's like, well, you know, my grandparents really believed in sangomas and all those things, and any chance they could get, they would take me to go see a sangoma. And Dumi's like, well, you know, in like modern day life, there's modern medicine, there's even Reiki, like there's no need for sangomas. And Boingi's like, well, anyone can do Reiki, but if you're a sangoma, you have to have a calling, right, Kat? And then she looks at Kat, and then we get the sense that obviously like we could figure it out throughout the movie, but now we have confirmation that Kat has a calling to be a sangoma. And then Tsego's like, wait, what? You have a calling? And she's like, no, it's just a mental illness. She's like, seeing things, hearing voices, that's a mental illness. It's not a calling. Then kind of like Dumi jumps in and he's like, yo, you know what, like this calling thing, they kind of base it based on class. So they're like kind of like people in lower classes believe in traditional stuff and sangomas, and he's like, well, you know, like people like us, people that have worked hard for their money, that live in the suburbs, like don't believe in that. That's kind of like the gist of that conversation. Blessing then comes out again, and they all keep quiet, and she starts putting dessert forks in front of all of them, and it zooms into the fork that she puts in front of Boingi. Then now they're in the kitchen, and Boingi's apologizing to Kat. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry about that conversation, you know, it was like just like so weird, I didn't mean it. And Kat's like, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine. And then Blessing comes in, she's trying to clean up, and Kat's like, you know what, it's late, just call it a night, she'll just finish up tomorrow. And Blessing goes to her room. We see Blessing in her room sitting on the floor, and next to her is Snafe, and she keeps like sniffing the Snafe. And then there's like candle lit next to her, and also those big bags that people use like when they're traveling. This one's like red, white, like small lines are like green and blue, I think. I'll try and put a picture so you guys can see what kind of bag I'm talking about, but it's big, and it looks like there's a lot of stuff inside that bag too. So she's sitting there, and then after she's done with her Snape, she's like moving back and forth and like clapping her hands like I'm a cozy like that, you know. And then afterwards we see her put her hand in this bag and take out soil, and then she like puts it in her mouth and she starts rubbing it all over her face. And then we see her take out a fork from the bag as well, and it's the same dessert fork that was used by Kat, Dumi, Tshego, and Boingi. She bangs it on the floor a couple of times, and then she picks it up, and then she like puts it in her mouth. And then we see Boingi and Tshego in bed, and we see Boingi like wake up and like she's coughing and she's like thrashing around the bed. Then we go back to Blessing. We see her with the fork in her mouth, and then she's pushing it deeper and deeper into her throat until eventually she swallows it, like she like swallows a whole fork. And then we see Boingi, like Boingi's on the floor, like she's coughing, she's clawing at her throat, she can't breathe, and Tshego doesn't know what's going on. Like he's like, baby, Boingi, what's going on? And then he's like, let me take you to the hospital. So, oh, let me call an ambulance. And then we see Boingi just end up on the side, and her breathing becomes really, really shallow, and then like there's blood all over her face, and then she just stops thrashing. The next morning, we see Kat holding this box, like this box set that has the dessert fork and the dessert spoon, and she's like, where is it? Like, I can't find my fork, I can't find my fork. Then she asks Blessing, she's like, where's my fork? It was there yesterday. And Blessing was like, well, like, I don't know where it is. And Dumi comes, and Dumi's just like trying to calm Kat down, and he's like, it's just the fork, like, are you sure you looked everywhere? She's like, I know, I searched for it everywhere, I can't find it. And then he's like, I'm so sorry, Blessing, can you just like look again? And he's trying to calm Kat down, and then Blessing comes back and she's holding this fork, and this fork looks dirty, like it's brown on top. And then she's like, oh, I found it, it was like under one of the tables there. And then they're like, why does it look like it's been through hell and back, basically? And then Kat just like takes the fork, and Dumi says thank you, like, thank you, Blessing. And then when Blessing leaves, Dumi's like to Kat, you know, let's not be one of those people that blame their helper for missing things. I think it was that night or the next night or day, Dumi then receives a phone call, and you automatically see his face change, and we assume that he just received the news that Bongi is no more. Then the scene changes, and we see Kat dressed in all black, like she's going to a funeral. She's sitting on the couch, and she just really doesn't seem there, and she's annoyed because Dumi's taking his time, and she's like, we're gonna be late, and Dumi's like, I'm coming. And then Dumi eventually gets there, and then she's like, the car keys. He's like, don't you have the car keys? And then she just like seems really annoyed. She's like, ugh. And they start looking for the car keys, and then Dumi finds it like in his pocket, and then he's like, like very sheepishly, like, the car keys. And then they get up, and as they're about to leave, Blessing was there cleaning like where the big cross is. And then as they're about to leave, the cross falls straight onto the floor, and Kat just looks very uncomfortable, and then she's like, let's just get out of here, like, please. And then they leave for the funeral. Whilst they're at the funeral, Blessing is sitting in the garden with Junior, the gardener. And Junior's telling her, like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. Like, he went out gambling. He's like, I got so much money. Like, I just kept playing, and like more money kept coming. And then he's like, how did you do it? Like, what's your ingredients? And then she's like, you want to know what ingredients I use? He's like, tell me what ingredients you use. And she's like, well, this ingredients, like, it's ingredients that you need to, like, it takes time to get, like, you can't just get it straight away. As they're busy talking, the gate opens, and the blue BMW that we saw in like the beginning scenes drives in, and Kat and Dumi are back from the funeral, and Blessing and Junior are still talking, and Junior invites her to go see him DJing. She's like, oh, you're a DJ? And he's like, yeah, you know, I'm a DJ, I'm not just a gardener. And he's like, please come, it'll be so great, like, this weekend. And then as Kat is like walking past, she's like shouts over to Blessing, like, Blessing, please come take down some curtains. And then she's like to Junior, well, I need to get back to work now. And then he's like, so will you come? And as he's busy talking to Blessing is like looking past him towards like the bushes, and then she just takes like that little big cutter thing that she cut plants with. She takes it and she walks right past him, and then like cuts the little thingy that was sticking out because it wasn't even. And then she's just like, I hate uneven things, and her whole mood changes, and then she just like walks into the house. In the house, Blessing makes Kat a cup of tea, and then she gives it to her, and she's like, oh, it's just like to help you relax. And then Kat says thank you, and then she looks inside, and you can see it's just not like normal tea. There's like little like black stuff. And then as Blessing is busy cleaning, she can see in the mirror that like the cup that she had just given Kat is just like sitting on the table. So she goes straight to it, and then she sees that Kat didn't drink whatever she had made for her, and then she gets really mad. We then see Dumi sitting in a meeting, and he doesn't look like himself. For a moment, it almost seems like his eyes are completely white, and he's just like staring, like almost as though like he's possessed. Like he just doesn't look like himself. Like he's just like staring, like. And then you just see like flashes of him, but like with eyes that are completely white, and then just in the meeting, then completely white, then in the meeting. And then someone's like, hey, like, are you still with us? And then he's just like, yeah. But you can tell that he's not all the way there. That night, I keep saying that night, but literally everything that's happening right now is literally within the 1 month that they have given Blessing. Like that 1 month contract, everything that's happening is just happening in 1 month. So that's why it's like that night, during the day, that night, because the scenes are like really fast and then they change very quickly. So that night, Kat is looking for a purple blouse that she got from Bongi. Like she's looking, she can't find it. And Dumi comes up to her, it's like, what are you looking for? She's like, I can't find it, I can't find the blouse. And he's like, just wear something else. He's like, and then she's like, no, I got it from Bongi. And then we see Blessing getting ready to leave the house. And you guessed it, she's wearing a purple blouse. When they're in the car to wherever they're going, Kat then says to Dumi that she can't do all the traditional stuff that Blessing's into, like all the rituals, all the recipes, and she's just like, I'm done, I can't do it anymore. Like she just freaks me out, And Dumi's like, don't worry, tomorrow I'll speak to her and like we'll just end her contract. Then we see Blessing getting home and she's with Junior. Like she went to go see him DJing and then they came home together. And then like he seems like so excited, they're kissing, like they're making out. They get to the door and then she opens the door and then like as he's about to get inside, like she closes the door on him and he looks so shocked and he's like, oh, Blessing. And then she's like, not tonight. The next morning, Blessing is doing laundry and then she pulls out the purple blouse that she took from Kat. And like she throws it into the laundry and then we hear Dumi calling her. So she goes straight to Dumi and then Dumi's like, look, listen, it's not gonna work out. So we think it would be great if you started looking for something else. And then he's like, but don't worry, we'll give you like a week to get your things sorted. But if you have like a job lined up or something, you know, like it wouldn't hurt if you started tomorrow, but don't worry, we'll just give you time to sort out your things. And then Blessing kind of just looks like shocked and angry and then she's just like, oh, okay. And then she leaves. Nighttime comes, they eat chicken and rice that Blessing obviously made, they're drinking red wine obviously, and they both just look very tense at the dinner table, like they don't want to eat, like they're not too sure, maybe because they basically just fired Blessing, so they just seem uneasy. Then they're getting ready for bed. Kat is in bed and it seems like Dumi wants to brush his teeth. So then he comes out, he's holding his toothbrush and the top part is missing. The top part that's blue and white is missing. So he's like, Kat, like, have you seen my toothbrush? Like my electric toothbrush is missing. And Kat just says, it's so funny what's gone missing since Blessing came into our lives. As Kat and Dumi are asleep, we see Blessing in the yard and she has her hands behind her back and it just seems very creepy. And like she just walks and walks until she gets to a certain spot and then she pulls something out of her pocket and we see it's the missing part of Dumi's electric toothbrush. And there was like strings and stuff wrapped around it and we see her burying it. Later that same night, we see Kat and Dumi in bed and the clock shows that it's around 3:45, so like 3:45 that morning. And then we see Blessing just staring at them like they're asleep and she's just like looking at them both asleep and it looks so creepy. Then she walks to Dumi's side of the bed, still looking at him, and then we see like Kat kind of just like move in her sleep. Then Blessing takes out that little black bag that she has and then she takes out like some sand and then she just starts sprinkling it on top of Dumi. Blessing leaves and then Kat starts hearing whispering like so then she wakes up and right in front of the bed is like this young man and again with a blanket like this and his face is painted completely white with red just like down the center and then all of a sudden he's just like gone. So she looks around the room and like he's nowhere to be seen. In the morning we see Dumi staring at himself in the mirror and he doesn't look like himself even more. Like now he just looks completely different. Like, just staring at himself. He doesn't look like himself. He basically just looks like a zombie. Like, he's just like, well, he looks at himself in the mirror. And then we see Kat still in bed. She gets up and then she goes straight to the bathroom, and she doesn't look to Dumi's side of the bed, because if she just like looked to the right, she would have seen that his pillow had like some dirt on it, but she didn't see any of it. And she goes and showers. While she's showering, Blessing is making their bed, obviously, so that she could get rid of the evidence. And then Kat comes out of the bathroom, like, she's all smiley, she's happy, and she sees Blessing making the bed, and she's like, oh, Blessing, you're still here. And then she's like, yes, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And Kat looks confused, and she's like, Blessing's like, for renewing my contract, Dumi just told me, thank you. And Kat just looks taken aback, and she immediately gets dressed, goes to the study to go confront Dumi. And Dumi's just sitting there again like a zombie, like he's just like, and Kat is shot him. She's like, how could you like renew a contract? And he's like, Blessing's a good worker, she deserves a second chance. And she's like, but you didn't even speak to me about it. And then she sees a contract on the table, and she picks it up and she goes through it, and she's like, oh my gosh, she's already signed it. And then she's like, for 6 more months. And he's like, Blessing's a good worker. And it's just like very weird. It's like she doesn't even notice. And then she's just like so mad, she just walks out. That afternoon, someone rings the bell at the gate at Dumi and Kat's house. And we hear someone say, Detective Moss from SAPD, and the gate opens. We then see Detective Moss sitting with Dumi, and then he's like, well, our records show that Martha Nkanya died from heart failure. And Dumi is still his robotic self. He's just like, and he doesn't answer. And then Blessing comes out, and then she's like, coffee, and Detective Moss says thank you. Blessing leaves, and he continues, and he's like, well, I'm here to talk to you about Blessing, Martha's daughter. And then he continues, and he's like, well, let me just go straight into it. We found Blessing murdered, and we believe it's related to Muti killings. Again, Dumi is just his robotic self, and he just says, Muti killings. And the detective's like, well, yes, we found her body and it was mutilated. Usually people like get these bodies and like kill people, and then they use their bodies for like muti because they believe that it could make them stronger or something like that. And then Blessing just comes out, and she's like, that's enough. And the detective looks confused. She's like, and then Dumi gets up and he goes to stand behind the detective and just like holds him like in a chokehold, basically. And then Dumi just looks at him, and then he comes out with a spray. It looks like Doom, but it's not Doom. Maybe something for like pesticides. And then she holds Detective Moss's mouth open wide, and she just starts spraying this Doom in his mouth, just like shh. And Doom is just holding his head, just like, again, with no emotion. And then afterwards, he dies. The detective dies. He falls onto the floor. And then Blessing just like takes out his car keys, and then she's like to Dumi, get rid of his car, hide it. And she's like, don't worry about this mess, I'll clean it up. And then Dumi leaves. And a couple of hours have passed. We see Blessing in the room. She's still clean, like she's on her hands and knees, she's cleaning. And then Kat gets home, and then she walks in and she's like, wow, what happened here? And Blessing does not seem interested. She doesn't even want to entertain Kat anymore. And then she's just like, Dumi dropped his coffee. And then already that was just like weird to Kat, because Dumi doesn't drink coffee. And then she's like, oh, dropped his coffee. And then she's like, yeah. And then she's like, wow, Blessing, Kat doesn't drink coffee. And then she's like, maybe it was tea. Then she asked him like, where's Dumi? And then she's like, I don't know. And Kat just looks so defeated, and she just walks out. Blessing is now in her room, and like she's just sitting there, and then she takes out these huge jars, and maybe the jars are like 5 liters, and she takes about like 3 of them out, and it looks like there's blood inside. Then she opens one of the jars, and then she takes out a heart, and then she's staring at the heart, and then she bites into it. Then Kat is in the room, and she gets a message, and it's a message from her mom, and her mom's like, oh please, like call me, get back to me, it's urgent. And then she calls her mom, and we just hear her say ma, and then we see Kat again on the bed, and she's asleep, and she hears like a thud. So she gets up, Tumi's not next to her in bed, and then she goes downstairs to go look at the cameras, and then the camera shows someone in the garden just standing there. So Kat goes outside, and she finds Tumi in the garden, and he's just standing there, just like, and then she's like, Tumi, what's going on? And he's just like, and then Blessing comes out, and she's like, what's going on? And then Kat's like, I don't know, just help me get him inside. So they bring him inside the house, and Kat is just trying to ask him like, oh, what's going on? And then Blessing's like, I think he's tired, I think he needs some rest. And Kat is just like, who are you really? Blessing then hands Tumi a cup, and she's like, Baba, drink. And then Tumi takes it, and he starts drinking, and Kat just looks so shocked. Anyways, they end up going to bed, and then the next morning they like wake up, and again, Tumi's not in bed. Kat walks downstairs, and she sees Tumi sitting by the counter, and he's drinking something, and Blessing's next to him, and like she's mixing something in Kat's cup. Her cup says wifey. And then she like approaches them, and then she's like to Kat like, oh, I mean to Tumi, like, oh, maybe we should go take you to a doctor. And then he seems not like himself, but he's talking, and he still looks like a zombie, or like not there. And he's like, I'm okay. Like no one's home, no one is home. And then Blessing gives Kat the cup, and she's like, I made you something to drink. And then she's like, I don't want your tea. And then the cup falls onto the floor. Kat looks scared to be in her own home, and as she's about to leave, she passes the dining room table, and we see Tumi sitting on the dining room chair, and Blessing is like next to him. Blessing is whispering in his ear, and we hear, but as she's like whispering, it's like she could sense something, and then she just goes to the direction that Kat is in, but Kat is not there, and we see Kat is hiding behind a pillar, and she's like holding her breath, and she just can't believe what she just saw. And then she leaves. While Kat is at work, we see she's like sitting at her desk, and then she looks up, and now there's 2 men standing in front of her, again with blankets over them, and like their faces painted white. And she gets the shock of her life, and she just falls to the floor, and then she opens a drawer, and she looks for a pulse, and then takes a couple of pulls, and those people aren't there. That night, we see her like walk outside, and then she's like, Ma, and then she hugs her mom, and then they walk into the house, and then her mom is like, tell me what's been going on. And Kat just looks at her, and Kat is just like, shh, like, you know, like, don't speak. They're then sitting at the dinner table, and Blessing serves them food. She puts in front of all of them, and Kat looks visibly uncomfortable. Like, she just picks out her food, and her mom just looks at her, and her mom is just like, so Blessing. And then Kat is just like, oh, we love Blessing, but she can tell like she looks so scared. And then Tumi is eating his food like an animal, like just like with his hands, like, and then he's like, yeah, we love Blessing is like family. And Kat's mom is just like, and then she looks at her food, and then on the side you can see like some brown like sand particles, and then she just pushes her food away. And then after that, now it's just Kat and her mom, and she's like, oh, Tumi's just in the study finishing up some work. And then afterwards, her mom gets undressed and like just wears like her traditional clothing, almost like her mom is also a sangoma. And then her mom just like starts saying like, I'm a course, like, you know, like, hey, sorry, that type of thing. That's what her mom's doing. And Kat was just looking at her like, and then her mom has like, I don't know, I think it has like animal fur or like a tail, and then she's just like hitting it like around, like shwa, shwa, like that, you know, just like walking around the house. And then she looks at Kat and then she says, join me, join me. And then they do it together. And then afterwards, they're just like walking around the house. And then we see Blessing. Now, Blessing is with Junior and they're making out. Like, they seem serious. Like, it looks like something is about to happen. So they're busy. They end up on the bed and then Blessing just stops. And then she's like, do you want me to show you the ingredients? Remember the ingredients for that money thingy that she did to him? And then he was like, now? And she's like, yeah. So she gets up and Junior looks so excited. He takes off his shoes. He's lying on the bed. Like, he's ready for what's about to happen with Blessing. And then in the corner of his eye, he sees that, like, that big red bag that I spoke about earlier. And then it moves. And then he's like, so he goes to the bag, it moves again, he unzips it, and then we see Detective Moss's decapitated head, and Junior like just moves back, like he's so scared. He's looking at this head, and then the eyes open, the eyes go shoop of the decapitated head. Now we're back at the house and Kat's mom then takes, like, you know that bag that they have where someone must put like all their, I don't know, like their bones and stuff. So then she shakes it, she throws it down, and then she's like, I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. And then she finds out that basically Blessing knew about Kat's calling, and then she was like, ancestors work with the living, they don't work with the dead. And then she says Blessing uses witchcraft. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means like Blessing is, obviously we know Blessing is dead, so I don't know who that person is, if it's just a ghost that was cleaning and cooking for them. Anyways, they go into the kitchen, and as in the kitchen it looks like Kat is stressed, so she takes out her medication, and then her mom goes, you still taking it? And then she says, yeah, but like it's like not working, like my nightmares are back. Then her mom says, give me that thing. So then she takes out one of the pills and then she opens it and there's nothing inside. And then she's like, that's why your visions and stuff are coming back. It's because there's no medication in here. And then Kat looks shocked, so she takes out like one by one, she takes out different pills and nothing, all of the pills are like have nothing inside. And she's like, Blessing did this, Blessing did this. And then afterwards they go into the main room, and then Kat's mom is like, Nanam, like it looks like there's something wrong. And then she's like, I don't know, she did something to do me. And as her mom's like walking around the room, her mom just like feels something. So she goes to the bed and then she like flips it, and as she flips it, she gets inside of the bed, and then she finds like a bra, and the bra has like strings wrapped around it. And then Kat's like, that's my bra. And her mom goes, Blessing wasn't targeting to me, she was targeting you. And then she's like, but why? Like, how does she control Tumi? And she's like, they take something that belongs to someone. And Kat's like, oh, like a toothbrush. And her mom says, yeah, a toothbrush, hair, anything. They hide it with, like, they bury it where someone can't find it. And that's what they use. That's what she did to Tumi. Now we see Junior run out of the room. After he found that head, he runs out of the room. He goes straight to like the kitchen door. He starts knocking. He's like, Katlego, do me, but no one's answering. He's so scared. He runs to the front door. He's knocking. And then as he's knocking, Blessing just pops out of nowhere. And then she's like, you forgot your shoes. And then he's like, get away from me. And then she's like, just take your shoes. And then he grabs his shoes, and then in that moment, Kat's mom opens the front door, and then he looks behind him and Blessing is gone. And then he's like, Ma, I need to talk to Kat and Tumi. And then he's sitting down and like he's kind of explaining to Kat's mom about what just happened. And then afterwards, Kat comes downstairs and she's like, what's going on? And Junior tries to put on his shoes. And as he puts on his shoe, his foot starts swelling up, and then he starts screaming in pain, like, ah! So now they're trying to get the shoe off of him, and then he takes off his shoe and he's bleeding everywhere. And then in that moment, Kat is just like looking like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, Blessing pops up out of nowhere. And then, I don't know what she does to Kat. And then Kat just falls down on the floor. And then Blessing takes her mom out. Now we're in the garden, and it's like Kat comes to, like she starts blinking slowly and slowly, and she sees Dumi doing whatever he's doing, being the zombie that he is, and Blessing just like walking around her, and Blessing's like, I tried to help you, but you didn't want my help. And she's like, it's unfair. Someone like you gets a calling and you didn't even want it. It should have been given to me. And then Kat's just like, where's my mom? And then Blessing just looks to the side, and then Kat looks up and she sees her mom tied to a tree. Like her mom is like sitting down, like slumped over, tied with her hands behind her back, like around the tree, and her stomach is cut open and there's like intestines everywhere. She starts screaming and crying, and Blessing looks like she couldn't care. So now as Kat is goishing, like just going through a lot, because she just saw her mom's dead body, she hears her mom's voice say like, my child, don't let my death be in vain, let there be light. And then Kat looks, and then she sees the electric toothbrush sticking out of the sand, and then she decides this is her time. So while Blessing and Dumi are occupied with her mom's body, it's like she's rolling, but like someone's also rolling her towards this toothbrush. Then we see Blessing by her mom's body, and then Dumi is like taking out the intestines and putting them in the bag, that bag that had the man's head in it. And then Blessing like takes her finger and then she like rubs it in the blood, and then she goes like, it's sweet. It was so weird. And then all of a sudden Kat gets to the like toothbrush and she's trying to pull it out, so she grabs it, and then Blessing notices her. Blessing goes to her, and like Blessing is just like talking to her, like just basically just saying like, you know, you don't deserve your gift, you don't deserve your gift. And then it's like, she's like, it's time. And then she takes a knife and she stabs Kat in the side. And as she stabs Kat in the side, she manages to break this electric toothbrush. And all of a sudden, Dumi comes too. Dumi's like, and he pushes Blessing down. Blessing falls down, and then afterwards he unties Kat. And then he's like to Kat, Kat, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Kat. So what are you gonna do? Like, why don't you do something? I'm sorry, but like, why doesn't he do something? He's like, so what are you gonna do? And Kat's like, I know what I need to do. And then she tells Dumi to tie Blessing up, and she goes into the house and she starts wearing her mother's clothes, the clothes that he sound like the one Sangoma's wear. She starts wearing all those clothes, and she's like, I'm ready for my calling. Now Blessing is tied up to the floor where Kat used to be tied up, and then Kat comes out, and then she's like, you don't deserve the calling. And Kat is like, I know, but you know, I plan on changing that. And then she blows like white powder. She's like, and then all of a sudden we see these like, it's like 5 people all like in blankets, and like their faces are painted white, all differently. One is like all white, one is like white, red, the other one is like red, white. There's an old lady, there's a young man, there's like the old men, like ancestors. They look like ancestors basically. And then they just like start walking towards Blessing. Like, it's very creepy. Like, they walk towards Blessing and they surround her. Then as they're all standing there, like statues, and then they move to the side. Then we see these 3 boys like on their hands and knees, and they're wearing like straw like dresses, and they have like the straw thing around their arms, and then like a mask, like an animal mask, and they're like walking on their hands and knees towards Blessing, and Blessing's nose is bleeding, but it's bleeding black. And then they like go towards her, they're crawling, and then she just looks at them, but she looks unmoved, like she doesn't even look scared. And then you just see blood start like getting onto her face, almost like they're eating her, or like eating her stomach. And then she just looks at them, and it's that's all you see, and there's blood on her face. Then the movie ends with Kat having accepted her gift, and that voice we heard in the beginning telling us about ancestors in another realm, we hear the same voice, and now we know for sure that it's Kat. And Kat says, you cannot reject Umbizo, for you alone are called upon for a reason. Thank you guys for joining me for the first episode of Spilling the Tales. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's very different, but I hope you guys like it. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!